This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. The soul of business. One of the taglines that I've worked with for years in my business is moving possibility into reality. I mean, I've literally, worked with that for, oh, good Lord, almost 3 decades now. And the idea of possibility, each one of us is an idea. I mean, think about this for just a minute. Yeah, you're an idea, I'm an idea. And how that idea gets manifested in reality, what we call reality, it's an important conversation to have with myself. How do I express who I am? What's in there? What wants to come out? And I think that is the nature of life. What wants to be expressed? I mean, I grew up on a farm, and many of you have heard me, some of the regular listeners here have heard me talk about this. I grew up on a farm, and nature was then, and it is today, probably my greatest teacher. My TED Talk was "Nature is the Ultimate Business Guru," and I meant that when I spoke it. You look at nature, everything looks for full expression. Everything is always looking to express what's possible. And my guest today, Brad Federman, we had him on, and I say we, my partner David Meltzer and we had him on our office hours show not too long ago. And what he was speaking about and kind of how he was positioning his whole conversation and the work that he does. I mean, I lit up like a Christmas tree. It's got, because the problem with the office hour show, we only get about 10 minutes with our guests. It's just kind of lift the lid up and look at what's under there. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. I had to have him on for a much longer conversation. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is having a much longer conversation about the idea of discovering, because many people have kind of lost connection to it, but discovering and then living what's possible. What's the possibility that the idea of who I am wants to be expressed as? That's what we're going to be looking at. And that ties directly into the soul of your business, because that idea is fueled by soul. It is. It's absolutely fueled by the spirit that, kind of makes you who you are, makes your company what it is. So, Brad, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. I had fun with you last time, and I think this will be even more fun because we can expand. So, yeah.
Love it. Now, you have been over 30 years in the corporate world. You were an EVP at Novations Group, and I'm very familiar with Korn Ferry, which Novations became was Korn Ferry.
Right. Yeah.
You've worked with Accenture, Humana. We've run in some of the very same circles over the course of our decades-long careers. You've got something that you organize yourself around, and your company right now is PerformancePoint LLC, which you founded and you're the CEO of. And PerformancePoint, there's a point of performance. There's a nexus that actually, we can kind of revolve around that. He will, either sustain us or can debilitate us if we're not careful here. But the idea of discovering and living possibility.
Yes.
When we were in the green room before we went live here, I had asked about this, and you said, well, that's not a marketing thing. That's actually something that my dad was speaking about. So I'm going to just flip this and have you just kind of say, what's that about, Alfie? What'd your dad have to say about this?
Sure. So, actually, it's interesting. I think we're limited by 2 things, imagination and experience. And my dad never actually told me this. I learned this from his brother and his sister, because he would never share the story out of a sense of humility. But when he was about 9 or 10 years old, he lived in New York, and his family was pretty poverty stricken. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. Parents were in the 1-bedroom apartment. His sister had a little alcove with a covering, and my father and his brother Marty lived in the main living room, which at night was their bedroom, and during the day was the living room. And my dad, he had this concept that, he knew life wasn't fair. He also knew that people can't change your circumstances, and he didn't expect anybody to do that. You're born into your lot. That's the reality of it. But he did think that there were certain experiences that everyone should have because they can be life-altering experiences. And so he wrote, this is interesting, he wrote Mayor LaGuardia a letter basically explaining this concept to him, that it isn't fair for some kids to have certain experiences and other kids not to. And the repercussions of that are huge. And he gave an example in the letter. He said this very eloquently for a kid that age in the letter about sleepaway camp, that if kids who came from different places, backgrounds, rich and poor and religions, all came together in a sleepaway camp and they built relationships, a couple of things happened, would happen. One would be that you would, if you're poor, limited in terms of narrow in terms of your view of the world, it expanded dramatically and you saw what else was possible, right? And if you were of a person of means who had seen a lot of the world, but you didn't interact with people of a lower economic, socioeconomic status, you would see them as real people. You'd have empathy. And then everybody grew from that experience, right? So Mayor LaGuardia was so touched by it. This is before he had TV cameras and everything like that. He went to my dad's apartment. He literally knocked on the door and he sat down with my dad and his family. And he told my dad that he loved the letter. And he said, because of it, he was going to send my father to sleepaway camp, to which he did. Now, at the end of that week, he came back there and he looked at my dad and he talked to my dad and he asked him how it was. And my dad said it was the best week of his life. He loved it. That he wished he could do more things like that, right? So the mayor looked at the camp director and said, let him stay for another week. And my dad interrupted and said, no. And LaGuardia said, what do you mean? You said you loved it. And my dad said, if you have another week, give it to another child. And his whole point was, I want people's eyes to be opened. And then he convinced the mayor to actually take a dilapidated building, a block, and put a playground there so kids would have a place to play and be safe. And I never heard that story.
Your dad's 9 years old there?
Yeah, 9 or 10 years old, really young. But I never heard the story from my father. I heard it from his family. But it stuck with me. And the story stuck with me because he has a really good point, which is there are so many people that don't live up, and so many companies that don't live up to what they can be, not because they can't, but because they haven't had the experience or the imagination to do. And that's what I've centered our business around. How do you create retention levels that you've never ever thought were possible? How do you create engagement levels where people, they talk about your business positively when they leave, not because somebody's watching them, but because they want to? How do you create an environment where people are more productive and there's less friction and they want to stay there? To me, those are the powerful moments when you can, because that's what changes a business, right?
Oh,
so that's what we focus on. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what changes the business. It's interesting. When a company gets founded, the imagination is in play there.
Correct.
And then we start, layering on top of it all kinds of processes and management levels and expectations and all kinds of stuff. And it becomes now not an idea with a business. It now becomes a business with an idea as an afterthought.
Yeah. And we forget that secret sauce.
That secret sauce, which is, that is the competitive advantage that is not replicable if you can keep connected to it.
Yes.
You've done something in your latest book, and I want to be sure that I mention this here. Let's see. Okay, give me the title.
Here we go. I got
scanning through my notes. You got a copy of it there. There it is. Yeah. Never delegate again. This is one of the things when we were in the office hours conversation that I just kind of sat bolt upright and went, whoa, let's talk about this. Because the way, the imaginative use of delegation, kind of putting it in that framing. Most leaders that I've worked with, I'm saying most, 99.9% of the leaders with whom I've worked were, they want to get stuff off their plate. And a lot of the coaching work that I've engaged with them on is okay, you need to get some things in place here. You need to be able to delegate this off so that you can, be focusing on what you really need to be focusing on, because this stuff is not it. And I had never connected the dot in the way that you had actually articulated it in the book title speaks to here. The purpose of delegation is not to clean my plate off. That's not the purpose of why I would want to delegate something to somebody. Would you kindly just elaborate on? I'm going to delegate to this elaboration to you. What are you looking at about never delegate again? What are you actually talking to and about with this?
Sure. So
why is that? For the sake of what is it important?
Sure. If I were to put it in one sentence really quickly, it would be never delegate again, always grow. And the concept really boils down to this. I don't think about delegation assignments. I think about growth assignments, right? And there's a purpose to that. First of all, it's the right thing to do to begin with, right? We need to take our people and give them bench strength. I always get concerned if I don't develop and grow my people and they stay, I'm in trouble because we're not going to grow as a business. We're going to fall behind as a business. Too many managers say, I can't grow this person because they'll want to leave. And I actually think it's the opposite. One of the biggest retention factors that exists today is growth.
Yeah. Skill
sets are only lasting 2.5 to 5 years. And people are working for 50 to 60 years, and that actually is growing. I just read an article about more and more 80-year-olds working, right? It's just becoming a reality. So if you think about that, if you graduate from school now, you're likely to have to literally recreate yourself 24 times in your working life, which means I want to work at a place that makes me faster, stronger, and better today than I was yesterday. And I need a leader who's going to think that way every day when they come into work. And here's the other thing that really matters. Employers have to think about this. Life cycles for companies used to be decades, and now they're just a few years. You're seeing companies that become big and then disappear like that. If you want to stay relevant, you need a growth strategy, and that growth strategy starts with your people, and that leads to your company. Yeah. And that's why I wrote the book, because the world's changed and shifted, and we have to change and shift. These models are too old and out of date.
Yeah, I want to emphasize a point that you just raised here. Growth strategies begin with your people.
Yes.
Begin with your people. And those of you that are listening that are managing or leading an organization, when you're looking at how do we scale, the one piece that almost always is not addressed is how do we scale our people so that we can then scale our business. And I work with, one of my oldest clients, they've been with me this year, they've been with me 37 years. It's just crazy. And they're great. They're wonderful. Japanese firm. And their tagline is growing great companies by growing great people. And they live that.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's all.
It is. It's just beautiful. So the idea of delegation, I may get a benefit from passing something off that allows me to do something a little bit differently. But what I also need to be paying attention to is this idea of growing my people. What's where the rubber meets the road here, so to speak. Yeah. How am I delegating? How do I frame this question? How would I most effectively delegate a task to somebody that, number one, it's going to get it off my plate here, but number two, do it in a way that addresses their possible growth.
Yeah.
That whole idea of possible.
So we did a couple things. One is we built a new model called the growth matrix, which helps you identify what assignments are really good for growth and what assignments are not. Mm-hmm. And that's the first thing you have to do is really determine this piece of work. What should we do with it, right? How should we view this? If you determine that it is a good growth assignment, there are 4 core steps, and we outline them in the book, but I'll go over them in general right now. And the first one is to define the growth assignment. I think it's the thing that people skip first. They automatically go, oh, wait, I got something to do. Blaine, here you go. And they haven't even defined what it's this ambiguous thing that they pass to Blaine and they hope it all works. But they trust Blaine, so they know Blaine will get it done, right? Which is kind of crazy for two reasons. One is you're not doing Blaine a favor because you're giving Blaine something that Blaine has to figure out before Blaine even does it, right? That's the first thing. Second problem with it is you're going to Blaine because you trust Blaine. I'm going to you because I trust you. So I always say this. If you have a go-to person that you trust in your team and you feel proud, you shouldn't, because subtly, whether you mean to or not, you're sending a message to everybody else in your team. And that message is, you are my no go-to people. I don't trust you at all. I trust Blaine, but I don't trust you. And if you're going to do that, then that means you're going to overburden Blaine and you're going to get exactly out of your people what you have shared with them, which is nothing. So the first thing you have to do is define the assignment and don't think about people. Why are we doing this? What does success look like? Why is this important to the organization? We have a series of things that you have to answer. The next step is to what we call match the assignment. The growth assignment. Now, if you notice, I didn't say assign it. I said match, which is all about looking at how much time it will take and what time people have on their plates, about things like skill sets, right? Career aspirations, not just for the next year, but for the next 5 or 10 years, right? And you should know that about each of your people that works for you, right? If you don't, you really can't help them. All right. And a series of questions that look at what makes the most sense. And when you look through your whole team and you look through your whole team that way after you've defined the assignment, something amazing happens, Blaine. I've had so many managers use this process and they go, I was going to go to Joe, but I realized I always go to Joe and he's actually not the best one for this assignment. And they have this aha that when they get out of their comfort zone and they really analyze, I have other people that could do this and they would benefit more from it. And I could actually have Joe benefit more by doing something different. It's a powerful thing that happens. Then from there, it's sharing the assignment. And what's great is if you do the first 2 steps well, it actually creates a script for you to share with that person to set them up for success. I'll give you one example from sharing the assignment. One thing that we have you do that most managers never do, and it's simple, and it's shocking they don't do it, but it's a determinant of success. Doing this will reduce learning curves, will increase success chances, confidence, you name it. All I have to do is say, Blaine, I want you to know why I chose you for this assignment. I want you to know why I think you'll be successful, right? And that's just one of the things in the script. But for that person, it's a powerful message. And they go, I know what I have to fall back on, what I have to lean on, because this is what will help me succeed in this project. It's a powerful message that you got to send. What are all those scripted things you need to share with that person, right? And then the last one is, how do I support that growth assignment? And that's all about how you follow up to milestones, meetings, evaluate, manage, that kind of stuff, hold people accountable. But here's the thing. We actually have a process we use that's built around 4 factors. One is skill set needed for this job. And the other ones are personality traits that affect the way that you will work with this person and the way that they will handle their assignment. And so, you're going to work with one person on your team very differently than you work with another person on your team. I might have a person who likes to build their own structure and loves to have a lot of freedom. Well, I'm going to give them the freedom to do that work because they're good at that and they build the structure themselves. I might have another person that needs structure. Well, when I dish the assignment to them, we're probably going to negotiate some things and I'm going to share some things with them that I won't share with the other person.
Yep.
I might have another person who needs interaction when they work. And part of that interaction is about just bouncing ideas off of somebody. It helps them think through things. So I might actually need to be, not give structure, but I might need to be a sounding board, right?
Yep.
And so we have this assessment that we give people. For the manager, they take the assessment, the employees take the assessment, and then they look at the styles. Here's how I like to give growth assignments. Here's how I like to receive them. And then you realize, oh my gosh, I got to change a little bit for you. Hey, let's negotiate a few things. But it's a powerful framework that allows them to have that discussion. And monitoring it matters, because if you monitor it poorly, you're going to either make people feel like they're set up for failure, or you're going to make them feel like you're thumbing them and you're just over top of them all the time, and they can't take it and they want to quit. You can't do that. You got to do it in a way that meets them where they are. And that's the power of supporting them. I don't say managing, I say supporting, because it's a psychological difference.
There is. I mean, linguistically, it makes, people make up meaning about things. I don't know anybody that likes to be managed.
Yes.
Even my dog doesn't like to be managed. She really chafes at that.
There you go. And you know what's interesting is when you start thinking about growth through this lens and delegation through this lens, not only are we really tearing the page of delegation out and rewriting it, we have rewritten the way you delegate completely, but it makes you think about your coaching and leadership style differently. And so we actually provide some chapters in there about giving feedback and how do you ask questions and coach people. And it's a real powerful learning for folks, because they think about things completely differently. After reading, the first part of the book says, here's why you need to rethink the way you delegate. The second portion of the book is, here's how you do it. And the third portion is, okay, here's some skill sets we got to refine. And it's amazing because people look at those skill sets and they go, wow, I didn't think about it that way, but now I understand why, right? And it just builds on itself.
That's the way that you're framing that and actually positioning this. One of the ways that I'll reference impact that leaders are having in an organization is a metaphor around the bow wake that a boat will generate as it moves through the water. And a bow wake is kind of an indication of how much friction is being generated, how much resistance, more precisely. The larger the bow wake, the more resistance. And a lot of leaders are not aware of what comprises their bow wake, so they don't have a way of actually regulating it. And they go through the marina at about 15 knots, and they've got boats being tipped over and all kinds of stuff.
I love it.
In the green room, when we were conversing before we started recording, you told me a story about a new employee. And I said, I've got to have you tell that story again, because I think it's really indicative of a level of awareness of bow wake that sets somebody up actually to succeed, even though they stubbed their toe in a very major way. But there was a recovery that was allowed to occur. And I love the story, so I'll just kind of turn it back over to you, because, folks, I want you to listen to this. I really want you to listen to the positioning on this and put yourself in Brad's shoes here, as the recipient of this unexpected opportunity.
Yes, unexpected opportunity is a good phrasing. I like that. Well, it was a little bit over 5 years ago, and I had a new employee who literally had just graduated from college, starting for me. And, she was in her first day, and I had set her up in our survey system. This is literally her first day. I set up in our survey system as a user. And I said, don't worry, you can't do too much damage. The only rule I'm going to give you is don't go into any existing surveys and play around with existing surveys. Copy one over, play with it somewhere else, rename it, and you're fine. And she said, okay. So I wanted her to kind of get to the survey system and start learning it. And about 10 minutes into it, am I allowed to cuss? Because she cussed. Can I do that on this podcast or no? I don't want to break any rules.
Yeah, it's all good.
About 10 minutes
it's an
into
adult
this
audience.
About 10 minutes into this, into her doing this, I hear in a really high pitched voice, "Oh shit!" And she is freaking out. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, nothing. Really high pitched voice. And she doesn't talk like that. And so I said, you can tell me. It's okay. I promise I won't get mad. And she said, well, I think I erased your entire account. Now, you got to mind you, this is about 10 years worth, maybe 15 years worth of client data. So if she erased it, that's a big deal. I said, oh, no, there's no way you could have done that. It's impossible. You're set up as a user. I'm the super administrator. It can't happen. And she said, will you just check your account real quick? So I opened up my account. And when I opened up my account, I looked at it. Everything was gone. And I'm going to say the F word didn't fly out of my mouth, but it flew out of my head, right? It was, I thought that word. My gut was on the floor. I mean, all of my years of work were gone, and so I wanted to react, and I was about to. And I remembered her high-pitched voice. I remembered the fear and the trepidation that was happening in that high-pitched voice. And I thought, if I react, it's going to make it worse. So I said, you know what? I believe that 99.9% of problems can be solved. You just have to have the right perspective. You have to be willing to brainstorm. Are you willing to brainstorm a solution with me? And she said, sure, I'll do that. She was still nervous and scared, but we sat down, we started thinking through it, we started brainstorming solutions. And she said, I think I've got an idea of what we can do. I said, great. I have to go to a client meeting. By the time I get back, you're probably going to be gone. So let's talk in the morning. She said, fine. So by the time I got back, she was gone. So I saw her in the morning, and I was about to say, she said, take a look at your account. And I said, great. I looked at my account, and she had gotten it all back. She had solved the problem, and that was awesome, right? And I was about to say, well, what did you learn from this experience? And she said something really interesting to me. She said, why didn't you scream at me? Why didn't you curse at me? Why didn't you get angry? And I said, what would it have done if I had? And she said, I would have cried. I said, well, I didn't want you to cry. And she said, and I probably wouldn't be here today. And I said, I definitely wanted you to come back. I said, I would have felt better in the moment and worse later. And so I said, the biggest thing we can do is focus on solving problems and learning. So what'd you learn from this?
Yep.
And she's looking at me like I'm crazy because she hadn't experienced that yet. And now I was her first job out of college, but she had worked other jobs. And that was not the way she had been treated in other positions. And so it's a reprogramming. The model where people say, well, I got to fix this person. They're not performing well. And so you focus on the outcomes and what they're not doing right. I always say, back up. Back up. Outcomes are based on action and activity. And action and activity, behavior and activity, they're based on beliefs. And your beliefs, they're based on experiences. And so it's really about creating new experiences and then processing those so that you gain new beliefs, so you behave differently. And then you get, amazingly, miraculously, you have different outcomes, which is one of the reasons why in the book that you referenced, it's got stories, because I want to give people unique experiences that they don't just get content. They see it in action. They see it working, and it helps them rethink and recalibrate where they've come from in their life and what they've learned, and to have a new experience and a new belief system through the book.
Yeah, all behavior is generated out of meaning, and meaning is generated out of belief systems. So,
exactly.
Brad, where can people find out more? Go ahead, please.
No, what's amazing is what you just said is true, but the way most people lead does not reflect that, and we have to shift it if we really want to make big change in an organization. Yeah. So.
All an organization is a collection of people in relationship. That's all any organization is. And if leaders do not understand that their primary job is to curate relationships, the relationship that people have, with each other. Know who you're putting people together with, but also if you curate the relationship they have with work process, curate the relationship they have with clients and customers, curate the relationship they have with their chair, with their parking place. I mean, you start looking at it through the lens of how can we enhance the qualitative nature of all of these relationships? You got a pretty good shot at being successful long term, and unexpected opportunities become just that. They are now opportunities.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Magic happens when people come together. And that's what a leader's role is to do, is to have a group of people come together and be more than they would be if they were working by themselves. That's it.
Perfect. So. That's it, and that is it. I love that. That's probably the simplest way of describing a very complex process, which is called running a business.
I love it. You were going to ask me about my book, I think. I'm sorry, I had one more thing I was going to tell you.
Where can we get a copy of it? Where can we find out more about what you're doing? At PerformancePoint and that sort of stuff.
Sure. So you can find it. You're going to find it on Amazon. You're going to find it on Barnes & Noble, any major book retailer. You'll also see it on bradfederman.com, which will highlight my speaking and books. You can also learn more about what we do as a team, because I have a bunch of people that work with me. We do great work around culture, leadership, employee engagement, customer experience at PerformancePointLLC.com. And we love what we do. We're proud of what we do. We wake up every day trying to make that magic happen that we just discussed. And that's the art, man. There's an art and a science to it. We like to play with both sides of that. We want to be good at the art and the science and bring it together. So
that's where the beauty is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The book is Never Delegate Again, Uncover the Secret to Growing Your Company, Your People, and Yourself. There you go. Yeah, and those of you that are actually watching this on Spotify or on the YouTube channel, there's a copy of the book. Okay. My guest today, Brad Federman. Brad, thank you. I mean, I've loved this conversation. I knew it was going to rock, and I want to thank you for just kind of showing up the way you show up. You're making a difference, and I love that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed our conversations, Blaine.
You bet.
Pleasure to know you. Thanks.
Absolutely. We'll stay connected here. And as I'm signing off here today, just again, the admonition and all, at the end of every one of these episodes, nature works if it's left to its own devices. Everything in nature wants to express a possibility. I started the whole thing off with this whole episode off of that little riff. There's nothing in nature that serves as a center of accumulation. Everything in nature is a center of distribution in some way, shape, or form at some point in time. You are a part of nature. Act as if you are a center of distribution in your life, and your life will work amazingly well. Act as a center of accumulation, you're going to have problems. I guarantee it. Be a center of distribution in your life, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm, and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.